time, we want to get to our first guest who really needs no introduction because he is a multi-platinum rapper, executive producer, director, actor, writer, and he has another hit on his hands right now, television series For Life on ABC. Please welcome the mogul himself, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. Have a seat. The song never gets old. It never gets old.
Every day is somebody's birthday.
That's right. And you know, we're here to celebrate Black History Month, but I want to celebrate you for a second, right? Star, Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, everybody.
Thank you.
Got a star at the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, it's like a lifetime achievement award for me. You know, a lot of times my music didn't receive the accolades connected to the success it was having because it was some racy content in there, you know, so. Like Best New Artist, they gave it to Essence instead of me. But they can't find Essence no more. I'm still around here, so I feel good about it, you know?
But you've had an incredible music career. And did you, in a career period, and everything that you've done, and the Walk of Fame, the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame is about your body of
right.
what you've done with your career. And you're just getting started, I feel like, personally. You're just getting started, which is amazing enough. But could the teenage Curtis growing up in Queens have ever imagined being where you are now, having success that you have right now?
Absolutely not.
At what point did you go, I made it?
You know what? It was when I bought Mike Tyson's house. To be honest with you, at that point, because who Mike Tyson was to me at that point, like watching them, it's a difference between fighters who win and fighters who convince the world that no man can beat them.
Yeah.
And Mike had that thing that convinced me that nobody could beat Mike. And then when I was buying his house, I was like, I'm Mike Tyson. Like, I was feeling like that. And then, you know, it's a big space. It was like 50,000 square feet. And look, it's...
Did you see all of it?
I did most of it. But it's ill because because I didn't have a lot of space growing up, I looked at those things like they were accomplishing everything. And those big estates, you really don't want those. You don't want that. You look at it, you think you want it now, you do not want that. You might need to buy it to have it for a little while to feel that, and then you get rid of it and you'll be fine with it. Because when I look at the big estates now, I'm like, who's gonna cut the grass? I'm not doing none of the maintenance and none of that stuff connected to that property. And then it's like you got 18 bedrooms, but you really only got one bedroom because you got a staff in the house, and if you go out of that room naked, you know, everybody just saw you, you know, telling, you know, who you have to explain it to. Because it's like six people.
But it's crazy. I used to always tell young athletes, the bigger the house, the bigger the bills.
Yeah.
Bigger responsibility.
In the beginning, it was perfect, though, because I went on tour and came back, I had $38 million, and I didn't have $800 a month for my bills. Try doing your taxes with that. You got $800 a month bills, and you just made $38 million.
Wow.
You know, so they would have just took 40% of that and said, thank you. Like they were my personal partner without notifying me at any point. You know, so I had to buy a property and I had to spend the money or they would have just took it.
Just take it anyway. That's what your good old Uncle Sam, the uncle you never really meet. But, you know, and I know recently, tragically, we lost a friend in Kobe Bryant. And Kobe, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others passed away. But you took to Instagram and you posted something. I want to read to you, quote, I feel like I have to achieve what I want in life now after this. I have to focus. I'm not arguing with anyone anymore. I'll deal with it another way if there's a problem.
Right.
Because you have these beefs on Instagram, or you used to.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on this a little bit more?
We'd be having basic misunderstandings, right? But it starts to feel like it's far more intense than it is, and it starts to overshadow the things that are really happening. Like, the people start to know me more for the argument than they know me for the things that I've accomplished. And I'm looking going, I gotta focus and get these things done now because I don't feel like I have. When you see something happen like with Kobe, you it reaffirms that tomorrow's not promised.
Yeah.
And that you need to focus and try to accomplish the things that you want for your legacy.
And you've accomplished a lot for your legacy, big rap career. Now you're Uber. And Uber, you know, it's big. No, yeah, Uber. That's a big word. Uber successful producer, an actor, and all these other things. How did you translate that success you had in rap? How did you use that success and transfer it over to the production side of the business or the acting side of business?
Just having my finger on the pulse of what the audience wants. Like, our culture is becoming more and more graphic. Like, female artists, just a few things from female artists, hit records they created, the things they said. You gotta eat the booty like groceries. Yeah, you was just another go on my hit list.
I'll be honest with you, I did not, you just caught me with that one right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the song, but I wasn't gonna say the lyric, but.
Yeah, you're more like Monday through Friday. I'm like the weekend. This is what they're saying, things that they say for shock value, or big Birkin bag worth 5-6 figures.
Yeah.
Stripes on the booty, you can call up your Tigger.
Oh.
Yeah. That's what she said, call it Tigger. So what am I supposed to say? I mean, for shock value, like, candy shop is like PG-13 now.
Yeah, nowadays it is.
That ain't gonna work right now.
But when you took that music, when you had music, when you walked into the room to sell your first show,
right.
How did they look? How do you think they looked at you? Did they take you seriously?
You know, actually, music was present at that point. I was telling them there's a place for bad music and it's television. Because the last place that they spend money in the budget. Because they've done everything. They paid the actors, they paid everybody, the special effects. They've been through all of that process. And now they're clearing samples, and the director will bring in his dream sequence of what he'd like the episode to be, and then they will change it for things that are comparable, that feel similar, but those things would not sell right now if you put them on iTunes. So I felt like that's just bad music, you know? And because I talked about it, I had an opportunity to create 8 songs that matched the tones of the actual characters, and a part of the pitch, we would just press play. Courtney would explain it, the writer showrunner for the show, and then I would press play and I would let them hear the music playing as a part of the presentation, and it was like, this would make a better show than the things that, because he knows we're gonna cut corners when we get to this point. And I'm saying I already did it, so we don't really have to pay as much as it would cost to do it.
But you know, Power, you know, this is a get rich town. I can't,
Yeah.
If I sing it too long, we gotta pay you, because that's like infringing on your rights.
Right.
But that song, you changed that song after a few years, and it was a rebellion.
Yeah, it was like, did they change Sanford and Son Fifth? No, they didn't change Sanford and Son. Why did you change that? And I was like, oh, I didn't know this was Sanford and Son. And I apologize. Let me just put it back so everybody's happy. There's no reason for us to have a dispute over something that didn't have to change, right? And I just put the song back. Like, I really apologize to Trey Songz, because I talked him into doing that. And he was like, I told you not to do that. And I was like, how was I supposed to know they was gonna react like that? You know?
But it lets you know everybody appreciated it, everybody loved it.
Yeah, they liked it with Joe, the original one, felt like vintage. I was trying to give it an old feel to it, and he did it great.
But I'm curious for you now, being music, television, movies, what are you most passionate about right now?
Well, I haven't lost my passion for music. I was just out the other night on an All-Star weekend, so I had an amazing time listening to it. But I'm making a lot of money on TV. A lot of money. But look, the music part for me is still there, though. I still have a passion for it. It's just, I just didn't see myself being like the oldest rapper in history, like jumping around with the kids still. So now I wanted to do something a little different. Because you see, like, Morgan Freeman got like a whole head full of gray hair, and nobody feels uncomfortable when they see Morgan Freeman in the movie. I might be like Morgan Freeman. You know, so I'll do that. That's an idea there.
Well, it's a little different seeing a rapper with a hair full of gray than it is an actor.
I don't think it's supposed to be there. Like, the rapper's not supposed to be there with a head full of gray hair. It's connected to youth culture. You know, it's supposed to be young, it's supposed to be vibrant, that energy. It's supposed to change fast, hip-hop, you know?
But have you ever thought, though, because what you do now, though, is, like you said, is a template for not being stuck in one business.
Right.
That you're multifaceted. You can do more things than most people probably give you credit for. Because I'm pretty sure most people said he's a rapper.
That's it.
That's it. That's all he can do. And then you start popping project after project that had nothing to do with your music career. Have you ever looked at yourself as an example for these younger artists who are coming up?
I'm sure they'll follow the example that I'm, because I like, even with like the investments, like allowing myself to have equity involvement instead of just taking the money up front. Like, this is when everything's going great. Music, you're making so much money that you're not really interested in the money, but you'll do it if you have equity involvement. Because when Coca-Cola buy vitamin water, you show people all your teeth, like the bad version of them Johns, because you catch a real check.
Yeah.
You know, and it changes everything. And then you look at the film and television play, you see more music artists expressing an interest in film and television.
Yeah.
And the lines between TV and film are getting blurry because there's more money being spent on the productions. Like in premium cable, it's allowing you to make, did you see Godfather Harlem?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like that, and you look at the cast of that joint, that with Forrest Whitaker and them, and that joint is heavy. Like, it really is not important to me that you watch it because it's not my show. But that joint is fire.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Fire. Yeah, that joint is good.
But it's something, because I remember years ago in LA, a mutual friend was like, yo, you know, well, let's go meet with 50 real quick. And I said, great, we met in the Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
All right, first time I ever met him, he was talking about, I'm going to do this movie. I'm doing this one, De Niro, Gerard Butler, all these. And then I just watched all these projects popping up. And this was before anyone really knew that you were into it. But you not only were starring in them, you were producing them.
Right.
You were.
That's the only reason why I knew I was going to do them. See, because at that point, we had the finances for the projects. So you can't tell me I'm not in the movie. I said, I'm going to do this one with Forrest Whitaker and Robert De Niro. That was freelancers. And then, with Gerard Butler, we did Dinner Thieves.
Yeah, it was a great movie. I love that one. And, you know, the sixth season of Power just ended, unfortunately, for fans like myself. But with that being said, there were a lot of spinoffs. You got one with Mary J. Blige.
Yeah, the Power Book 2. There's Mary J. Blige, you got Method Man in there.
So can you give us a little bit more what it's all about? And how many other spinoffs do you have from that?
Well, there's 4 other spinoffs from the Power series. So the Power universe, they should just hashtag Power Never Ends, because it'll be there. But what's happening is it starts 74 hours after it went off. Mm-hmm. So, you know, some of the fans will go, yo, Ghost don't even get a funeral? It's not funeral time yet, my brother. Next year, come June, late June, July, you'll see, you know, some things happen that, you know, make you feel better about this.
But I'm sure with the success of Power, when you pick up the phone and you call somebody, they say, absolutely, I'm in.
No, they listen to me now. Look, the first show after I did my overall deal that I pitched was For Life. Mm-hmm. So as soon as they passed on it, because Starz has to have the opportunity to see the material that I'm producing first. As soon as they passed on it, ABC bought it. Then go boom, and it's #1 in the 10 o'clock slot, and they go, who passed on that? Nobody remembers who said no, right? So now I come in, and I'm like, hey, you know, you guys would have had a huge success right now if you just said yes, but you said no. And everybody looks at me and they don't know how to tell me no more.
Which could be a good thing.
That's good. It feels great, man.
Yeah, it was funny. I saw you with Keke Palmer, and Keke said, tell him I want to be in one of those Power spinoffs. I'm like, Keke, you got a job with me. Relax, we're good. We know, you need to stay right here. But speaking about For Life, Curtis is currently executive producer of the new ABC show, #1 at the 10 o'clock time slot, For Life, which is loosely based on the true story of Isaac Wright Jr., who was convicted and sentenced to prison for a crime he did not commit. Now, right now, we're gathered here today. There are thousands of people who are in jails and prisons around this country who are innocent, that have been wrongfully convicted. Statistics show that for every 9 people on death row, One is innocent. That's one too many. And here in the U.S., we have the highest rate of incarceration in the world, and people of color are in prison at a disproportionately high rate. And together, Curtis and Isaac, they hope to bring some attention to this issue and create a movement with this show. So please, everybody, give a warm welcome to Isaac Wright Jr. Good to see you, man. First of all, I got to say, you clean, man.
Thank you.
You are clean.
Thank you.
So in 1991, you were convicted of a crime that you did not commit as a kingpin of a large drug operation between New York and New Jersey. So you didn't commit this crime. How did this all happen? How did you even suspect you of anything like this?
Well, you know, I was living in New York before it happened. And at the time, I made a decision to move over into New Jersey. You know, I had really moved up. My wife, my ex-wife at the time, she was a member of a very popular group, the Cover Girls. I had my own independent label, a number of artists I managed, and we were doing really well. And so we decided to do what a lot of people in the industry during that time, and I think they're still doing it now, did when they got a few dollars. They moved over to New Jersey. They even moved to Westchester, they moved to New Jersey. So we decided to move to New Jersey. Unfortunately, when we moved there, there was already this prosecutor that was doing some very, very, very questionable things. And it all came out in the end when he himself was indicted. But he was basically running a criminal organization within the prosecutor's office. And a lot of his detectives were involved. And one of the things that they focused on is they focused on people with wealth. And the purpose of focusing on people with wealth, because at that time, they were using forfeiture to enrich themselves. So, you know, if he had a problem with someone, even outside of the criminal element, a business partner, a person that was, you know, providing gas for a gas station that he owned with a partner of his, and they didn't do what he liked, he would threaten to plant cocaine in their car and take their possessions if they didn't do it with what he liked. And so, you know, I came up in this era during the time where the crack epidemic was high. And there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of things going on. And I moved up in that era. And when I started doing well, you know, my friends that engulfed me at the time, you know, they were still my friends. And so I was in an environment that made me vulnerable, even though I was doing very, very well. Unfortunately, you know, being vulnerable does not mean that you've committed a crime. But what it did do to me is that it put me under the eye of this particular prosecutor. He saw that I was doing well. He began to arrest people that knew me and that didn't know me. And he turned them against me. He targeted me, but he built a case from them around me. And ultimately, you know, these guys, they were arrested, they were in a lot of trouble, and they found a way out. He said to them, listen, we want this person, which was me. If you say this story, if you tell this story, we'll let you go. And, you know, this is a situation where I found myself in a trial, and I was representing myself, where I was seeing people pointing at me, saying that I was their boss. I never seen them a day in my life. You know, it's a very, very powerful emotion that overtakes you when people are accusing you of a serious crime and you have no idea who they are.
I'll tell you what, it sounds like a TV show.
Yeah, yeah.
It really does. Sounds unbelievable. And when did you first hear about the story, and what made you want to feel compelled to tell it?
Well, I first heard about it it was like 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah, I had a mutual friend that had a fight club, and they wanted me to come to the fight club, but the problem was the fight club was illegal. So at the time I was currently a licensed promoter in the state of Nevada because Floyd we had got together, we was gonna do TMT promotion, so I had set everything up while he was away. And I wouldn't go to jeopardize the license at the time, so they reached out to find an attorney to legalize their boxing match, and Isaac showed them ways to turn their event into technically a dark show. It's like a boxing match that's not televised. And it was legalized at that point, so I was able to go to the show and do that. But before that, they introduced me to Isaac, and when I met with him, he pitched his life story, but as like a feature film. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but it's not a film, it's like it's a series. So you could do a film later when everyone understands what's going on. It's a series that should happen. And because you need more time to tell the story. Then just 2 hours, you won't really get the gist of what that experience is like. And
he was ahead of everybody else. I mean, the bottom line is the simple fact is that his vision for the story was far ahead of everyone else from a business standpoint. And so while everyone was seeing a movie, he was seeing a picture that was going to be much, much, much more significant. And that's really what it boiled down to. He saw that this is a story that everyone would want to sit down and see every week. And he was correct, obviously.
TV now, movie later.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll do the movie later.
But I'm curious, because I was one of the viewers who stayed up. I say, well past my bedtime, man.
Right?
I got to wake up early.
This show should be on at 8 o'clock. Don't tell the people at ABC.
But I watched the show, and I'm wondering, how much was your real life, or is your situation different than what we saw on the
There's
first
some
episode
differences.
of the
I mean, you know, it's inspired by my life, and it's fictionalized in a way where they took my story and they captured its essence, and they told a story based on what happened to me. For example, you know, Aaron Wallace has a wife and a child, a little girl. I had a wife and a child, a little girl. My wife at the time was not a nurse. She was a performer. She was with the Cover Girls. But they kept the nucleus of the family, and obviously Aaron is in life, serving life in prison for drugs, you know, the same as me. So the essence of the story is there, but to provide the audience with a weekly episode, week after week, there's some fictionalizations to make sure that when they tell this story, that they're able to do it creatively and keep the essence of actually that journey that I had for 7.5 years as far as prison is concerned, another 7.5 years or 7 years pursuing a law degree, and then being investigated for 9 years after passing the bar by the Committee on Character. And so they had to find a way creatively to condense that and tell the general public my story.
And your story, unfortunately, it's familiar, because African Americans make up 13% of the U.S. population. Out of 1,900 exonerations as of March 2016, 47% were African Americans.
Yes.
So what does that tell us about the system?
That the system is set up like a fishing hole would be set up for a fisherman. The fisherman goes to the areas of a lake or a river or a pond that is more conducive to catching fish. Those are the fish that are most vulnerable. And so the system does the same thing, or the people in the system, they do the same thing. The people that are most vulnerable are minorities, poor people, people who can't fight back for one reason or another. And so it's easier for them to perpetuate this air of mass incarceration, because they're dealing with people that generally the public does not care for in ways that they should care for them.
And I know, Curtis, you've had your past,
Right.
Growing up, hustling, doing your things. Did that make you more sympathetic to Isaac's story?
It made me more surprised that he actually got out of it. Because, you know, like, it's probably
We don't get out.
4% of people could come back on appeal and do anything. You know, so it's so little amount of people that the appeal matters for. For you to tell me you came back and you gave back 70 years plus life, I'm like, you tougher than everybody I know that's tough.
Yeah.
Because the toughest guys, like period, they would say that they're afraid of the government. This is what they tell on other people. You know what I mean? So when you go through that, you run into.
How do you do that? I mean, Isaac, how do you do that? You're locked up. You think you may never see another free day outside of prison. But yet you go on to become a paralegal, and through all of the hardships of prison, through all of the challenges, through all the people who say he's guilty, how do you have the fortitude? How do you have the strength to study, to do all the things that you did to get yourself out?
Well, you know, when I decided I was going to represent myself, I did that because...
Which was crazy. That was crazy.
Yeah, they say the last thing you do is represent yourself.
Yes, that was, from my perspective, crazy. Like, no. You can represent me, I'm not representing me.
You know, I'm not going to actually argue that point because he's corrected. You know, it was an insane choice. And, you know, real is real. But some insane things were happening to me. Mm-hmm. And I learned early on that I was going to go to prison for the rest of my life. I knew that no one could help me. I saw what they were doing to me. I saw the moves that they were making. I understood that the judge was involved. And so I knew that it was over for me. Every lawyer I interviewed was saying, okay, listen, I can get you 20 years in a plea agreement. You know, and the more I said I didn't do it, the more they believed that I did. And so this was a situation that I decided that, you know, this was not only an attack on me, this was an attack on my family. And if I was going to go to prison for the rest of my life, I wasn't going to pay someone to send me there. I was going to take control of my life and my destiny. And if I went, it was going to be because of choices that I made. What I didn't count on.
Yeah.
What I didn't count on and I didn't understand at the time, when I picked up a law book for the first time after deciding to represent myself, the very first line, it was like I was doing it all my life. And so I didn't know up until then that I had a gift. And that gift culminated into me getting a life sentence in prison and turning it around in such a way that not only did I make new law to get several people out, at least 20 or 30 people, that I got out of prison, but I got my own stuff out, and I made incredible changes in the system at the same time.
I mean, just absolutely amazing. And something that I think gets lost, you don't hear a lot about, is families.
Families. Yeah.
Affects families too. And
it's an attack on family.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And we have to understand, you know, we talk about prison reform. When you talk about prison reform, you're talking about individuals that move through the system. But the people who suffer most are the families. If there's one person in prison, you have another 5 people who are suffering. And so when you multiply the collateral damage of what's happening in the system, you have millions of people who are suffering because of the wrong that's done. And when I talk about the wrong that's done, I don't necessarily talk about people who are convicted and are innocent. I'm talking about the person who stole a bicycle and got 30 years for it. You know, I'm talking about that person too. And so there's just not this, okay, he didn't do it situation. There's a situation where
they're overcharged. Yeah.
They're overcharged and they're giving you this time because they can. Okay, that's why they're doing it, because they can.
And I know you said you overturned your own sentence, which is amazing in itself. But you did something I read and I said, what? You got a veteran police officer to confess?
Yes.
What, how? What did you do?
Well, you know, this was now 7.5 years later. And one of the things that was happening with me, this was a divine journey. I mean, I cannot lose this truth. I was on a divine journey. And one of the things that was happening to me in prison is that I was representing other prisoners in prison in a court line system. So in prison is like being on the street in the sense that they have courts inside the prison for people who do wrong in the prison. They'll get an infraction, they'll get charged, just like you get charged in the street. They'll go to the hole, just like you get sent to jail on the street. And then they'll have a court set up where they'll try you for the infraction that you did. Now, lawyers don't get involved in that. So who gets involved? It's other inmates who have been trained to deal with that situation. And so what was happening with me, I wasn't just teaching myself the law and fighting my cases and that was on the street and fighting other people's cases that was on the street, but I was also representing these infractions, these in-prison infractions. And this was 7.5 years. So So by the time 7.5 years came along, I was 1,000 times better than I was when I got that life sentence, losing that trial. And when they looked at me, they didn't see it until it was too late. So at this time, when this hearing, and what's important about that hearing is that before that hearing took place, on the day that the hearings began to start, the prosecutor offered me a deal to allow me to be home in 2 years.
12.
He said, you know, my kingpin conviction, which my life sentence was vacated because I got that vacated 3 years earlier when I made new law in another prisoner's case and turned around and used that to reverse my own kingpin conviction. So when I went back, I didn't have the life sentence. I had 70 years that they affirmed on all the other charges. So they saw what I was doing, they cut me off at the knees, and they said, okay, I saw what you did over here. We'll throw that life sentence out, but we're gonna let you remain with the 7 years. So now, 7.5 years later, I'm at this hearing. The prosecutor says, listen, this has been going on for 7.5 years. We've been in and out of court every other month for 7 years. I think it's time for this to end. Mr. Wright is still facing retrial on the kingpin. We can give him life again. What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna offer Mr. Wright a deal that will allow him to go home in 2 years. He just has to withdraw this motion, have no hearings. He'll be home in 2 years. He won't have to worry about anything anymore, and we won't pursue sending him to prison back for life again. And the judge, you know, he was elated. He turned around and, you know, he saw that I had an opportunity to be home in 2 years, and he asked me, he says, you know, the prosecutor's offering an olive branch. What do you want to do? And I basically said that they took away from me. They took from me 7.5 years of my life. They took it. And I was not about to give them a single second of my life. I'd rather spend the rest of my life in prison trying to get out, even though I could be home in 2 years, than to give them another second of my life. And so I rolled the dice. I knew that the only way that I was going to get out was to have a police confess. And I rolled the dice.
I don't want to play Monopoly with you. You won't quit. you would not quit. But you know what happened to a lot of these wrongfully convicted or those who are overcharged, that they can't afford lawyers. They can't afford expensive the bills to help them. They can't do that. So what they do is they take a plea.
Yeah.
And you helped so many of them who were overcharged. You had quite a few overturned. But what was your biggest challenge, you feel, going through the system to try to help others?
The biggest challenge is the reality of what the system, how the system works. You know, when you put in a brief, a legal argument, you're not in open court when that appeal is heard. That appeal goes before a judge and their law clerks in a room. So they don't even have to read it. You don't know. They can just stamp it denied. That's the challenge. The challenge is being good enough to grab their attention and to make them want to do something about what's happening. Because it's no different than working in McDonald's. If that was your favorite food and you worked there, after a while, that's not going to be your favorite food anymore. You're going to be immune to it. And when you're in those positions when that's what you do on a daily basis, you're sending people to prison on a daily basis, you lose something. They may disagree with this, but I've been on that side. I've been on the receiving side. I understand. They don't even understand that they're losing something. There's a part of your humanity that you're losing when every day of your life you are sending people to prison.
But he asked how did you get the police officer
to confess? Yeah.
To confess, and you saying when you got arrested, he was a regular police officer.
Oh yeah.
And by the time you came back, to retry the case, he was
7.5 years later. He was the chief of the police academy. So this wasn't just a detective that confessed. This guy, he started out as a detective when I was arrested, but by the time I came back 7.5 years later, he had grown to be the chief of the police academy. So he was a very skilled professional. This wasn't somebody that was an amateur sitting on a stand. He knew exactly what to say, what not to say, and how to cover the truth. But he couldn't withstand that cross-examination. He couldn't do it. He broke down, he started crying, and he told the truth. He told everything.
Well, I think at the end of the day, you touched his conscience.
Yes.
He saw a man who was fighting for his life.
Yes. Yes.
And at some point, I could imagine after 7.5 years of watching somebody fight for their life, who could be out in 2 years, say no.
Yeah.
Because you said that, and I think most people who are watching this would think to themselves, I would have said, all right, I'll give another
Let me
2.
get that 2 years.
Yeah.
I did good. You see me? I gave back a whole 70 plus 2. Let me get that last 2. I'm cool. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Because the 70 is still there on that table, so to give back those 2. But you know, you live this life. You're telling this story,
right.
And this show couldn't be more timely with what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So how is it for you to? Because this show was 2.5 years ago when you met. It's not like you said, well, you know, prison reform is going to be a big deal.
Really
Let's make
hot
a show about it. But how does it feel for you, Curtis, to tell Isaac's story?
I mean, it feels great. It feels like the right story at the right time, and it's usually, like you said, you can't time how long it's going to take you to get this kind of project on the air. Mm-hmm. But if it made it before this period, it would still be on the air. If it came last year, it would still be on the air. I feel like it would still be a success because it would just take more explaining, more marketing for you to connect with it. But people are a little more conscious of it because so many other people are attached to it that are even within pop culture and the music culture, you got Kim Kardashian's prison reform and different the Innocence project, different things out there that people would be conscious of. And now to see it actually made as a television show, they'll be a little more emotionally connected to it.
Yeah, like you say, you don't have to explain it as much because, I mean, what Kim Kardashian has done, Meek Mill has gone through quite a bit of this, and now he is really pushing for it. And for those who watch this show, or those who may hear about it here for the first time, what do you hope they get out of this conversation?
Well, I think that they'll view it with a different intensity, knowing that it really happened.
Yeah.
And this is why it was fine for the project to go to network television, because it's exposed to so many more people than in premium cable. But it having it, when you watch it, knowing that someone actually had that experience, it's a more intense journey. It's like, I like forensics files. Do you watch forensics files? I like that, because it's like somebody's mistakes, like watching the newspaper. Like, that's how you messed up?
Yeah.
I watch it, and it's amazing. They mess up some amazing ways, right? It's almost like you can't get away with it. I think that's what they're trying to tell us through the show, is you can't get away with it. But they don't use forensics on every case.
Right.
They can't afford to. So it's a lot of cases that they just miss all of that information.
And you're a lawyer now.
Yes.
In New Jersey.
Yes.
Still going at it, still fighting the battle.
In the same courtroom that sent me to prison for life.
In the same courtroom that sent you to prison for life. So when you walk into that courtroom, do you have the same, like, do you walk in and you think about that every time you walk into that courtroom?
The only thing that stays with me is the first time I walked in. Mm-hmm. And the first time I walked in, it was like I saw a bunch of ghosts. They were, one of the prosecutor at the time, she took the partner to the firm that I work with, and she took him in the back room immediately. And so I got a bar card now. So I went straight across the courtroom, went into the back room myself. Now I got a bar card. So I went in there to see what was going on, because I knew that there was going to be an issue. When I walked in the room, she was just telling him he can't be here. It's a conflict of interest. How could he be practicing? How is he here? I mean, she was going in on him. And he listened politely, and he said, he's an officer of the court, just like you. He can be in any court in this country, and there's nothing you or anyone else can do about it. So.
And you earned it.
Then I earned it.
You earned it. You flat out earned it. And I just want to go back really quickly, because if you had said, I'll take the 2 extra years, then you would have come out with a record.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the fact that you fought, you have no...
Oh, my record is clean. My record is just as clean as the cop that would pull me over for nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. I like when you say stuff like that.
Hey, I have a feeling, make sure you watch the show. That line's going to end up on the show. And somewhere. I can see, Curtis, I can see your wheels are spinning. And, you know, but this has been, I think, enlightening, I think, over the last few years for me. And just understanding by reading your story how this whole system works. Because you don't realize it is not one person, like, oh, you get pulled over by a cop and then they put you away.
No, it's the whole...
And not saying that all cops are bad or anything like that, but in your situation, it was a system, that was set up and designed to do what it did to you and did to others. And I think you're a great testament, man, that, like you said, if you're going to go down, you're going to go out on something that you did, not something that you did not do. Right. And I just applaud you for the fight that you're putting up for so many, that you have put up for so many who are in your situation, to have them exonerated or to have their sentences reduced when they were unfair.
Yes.
And I applaud you for that, Isaac.
Thank you.
I mean, really, really amazing. And I know you guys are probably tired of talking to me, so we have some audience questions.
You have some audience?
Y'all ready for this?
Yeah.
All right, our first one, we're going to go to Andrew Johnson, who has a question for Curtis. Hey, Andrew.
Yeah, how you doing? Just a quick question. This is something that resonates on my heart a lot, and I just want to get both of your perspectives, if possible. But what do you say to the young boy or girl in the hood that feels like there's no hope, that they don't have the opportunities of learning about success or what success looks like? What would you speak to that individual?
That's for you, Isaac.
Well, that feeling that they have, number one, is real. That's not a mirage. It's not a delusion. It's a real feeling. And so the challenge that we have as individuals trying to engage that problem is that when we go and we say, listen, you know, there's a path out there for you to travel. And at the end of that path, you know, there's rewards. When we say that and we walk off, they're still hungry. You know, mom is still struggling to put food on the table, and that same pain remains. And so, you know, the thing that I would say is that when they're engaged, when these kids and these youth are in this situation, and, you know, they're engaged by people who are trying to put them on the right path, there has to be other questions that need to be asked. One of those questions is, okay, well, how do I eat in the meantime? And I think one of the things that has to happen is that we have to do more than just talk. We have to really, really, really engage the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is poverty and hopelessness. And until we start engaging kids on that level, we are turning them back to face the same problems after pepping them up.
I would tell them to fall in love with something, right? Because the only thing that separates people is their passion. And even when you see like the separation between the other fighters and Floyd Mayweather Jr., is he fell in love with it so young that he was able to do it enough to be that good. Like, and then you look at Kobe Bryant, who Kobe was. You know, sure, his dad was maybe some genetics because his dad was a basketball player.
That helped a little bit.
Yeah, but he fell in love with it and he outworked a lot of the people around him. You know what I mean? So the same thing with the Mannings.
Yeah.
Pops teach his sons to throw the ball to each other, and they both come home with NFL quarterback rings.
And same thing with you.
Yeah, it's just finding something that you're passionate about, that you can do enough, that you can, you know, look into it enough that you really become good at it.
But I like that. And, you know, and then I did something earlier with Dwayne Wade. Right. And I didn't know so much about Dwayne's story of growing up and mother and her addiction problems. Right. Police with the gun to his head when he's 8 years old, say, where's your mom? And those things that he'll never forget growing up the way he grew up. Right. But I think that everybody, even everybody up here on this stage and most successful people I've talked to have had struggles, have had doubts, have had feelings of hopelessness. But the one thing they didn't do, they didn't quit. That's right. And they decided to make the right decisions when it seems like they could have made a decision to go the easy route. Because at the end of the day, there is no easy route. Yeah. And things that are done in the dark, what did your mama tell you? They're going to come to the light. That's right. And next we're going to go with another question from Bridget Stevens. Bridget, what you got?
Hi, I just wanted to know, since we live in a time where like patience is like rare, millennials want everything fast, you spent 7.5 years in jail and 9 years you waited to practice law. What can you tell us about the importance of patience and not giving up?
Well, we've all heard the term patience is a virtue, I'm sure. But, you know.
You stole that from him. You saw that? You saw that? How he did that? He said what he said, and he came with that. Nah, I just don't like when things be flying around in front of me like that. Go ahead, do it. I'm watching you.
So, you know, the thing about patience is that patience it derives from something that we have inside us, and that thing we have inside us that determines the meter of which patience is going to extend is the belief in ourselves. You know, the deeper we believe in ourselves, the more patient we have because we know what the result is. The more murky our future is, and the more murky the road is to obtain a goal, the more impatient we are to get somewhere because we don't control that destiny. So, you know, I would say for a person to look, you know, a lot deeper in themselves and touch that thing, because remember something. A lot of times when you're running around trying to find answers, when you have challenges and you need something done tomorrow and you don't know where to turn, go to the mirror. Go to that mirror. You have no idea what you have inside of you as a human being, what's right here. It's everything, all the successful people that we talked about on this stage, including your success and 50's success, it began right here. There's something inside of all of them that they understood they had something that was them, and they had the patience to get from A to Z because of the belief that they had in themselves and their abilities. And so, you know, my answer to you and to everybody out there who's watching is to really, really, really dig deep down and to connect yourself with who you are.
There's points where my confidence is mistaken for arrogance. And it's because there's a large portion of time that there's nothing around to support the idea of it outside of me. So you gotta be able to believe in the idea that it's gonna actually work in order for it to happen for you. This is all success works this way. Like, you know, like everybody you see doing things, they have to believe it's gonna happen for someone else to make it happen. You know?
So true. And we have our last question, and we're going to go to Amanda Brown for that. Hey, Amanda.
Hi. My question is, what was your biggest challenge while producing for Life?
Oh, my biggest challenge, initially, when we talked about doing it, like I had, like my agency, they had sent me a project, and it was called Con Law. And it was a whole fictional project, and I wasn't turned on to the idea, and after I met with Isaac, I was like, maybe we can do that project if we made Isaac the lead of it. Like use his true experiences as the driving engine for the actual show. And then the writer had kind of fell in love with his own ideas, so he couldn't adjust very well. And then when if I hit a wall with something creatively, I usually change a complete direction by changing partners. I didn't have partners at that point, but then I partnered with Doug Robinson and Allison Greenspan over at Sony, and then we created a whole new approach towards Hank Steinberg to create the show for Life.
So you had to pivot.
Right.
You had to pivot. And, you know, this has been fascinating, and I love the show. I'll be up late tonight, mad at you in the morning, because the show is that good. And if you have not seen it, make sure you go check it out. For Life, ABC, 10 p.m. tonight, 9 Central. Big thank you to Curtis Jackson and Isaac Wright Jr. for participating in our Black History Month speaker series. And as I said, For Life tonight, 10 p.m., 9 Central, right here on ABC. And please join us on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern for our final Black History Month conversation, where we have Michael Eric Dyson, Tiffany Cross, and Jay Johnson sitting down with ABC News correspondent Deborah Roberts to discuss voter suppression. And you can find it on abcnews.com/live. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being here.
get filthy rich on you trek. I'm going to get filthy rich on you trek. I'm going to get filthy rich on you trek. I'm going to get filthy rich on you trek. I'm going to get filthy rich on you trek. I'm going